Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today. You are listening to the account with a new summary for day 399 of the war in Ukraine. Today I have an extra segment regarding the Moscow Patriarchate refusing to leave the Kyiv Pechersk Lavra. All other updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, including updates on Ukraine's new drones with a supposed range of 3,000 kilometers, work to map deportation camps for children, and the upcoming exhibition of the sinking of the Moskva. The occupied territories, with 2 updates on explosions occurring in Melitopol and Crimea. Russia and Belarus, containing Putin's meeting with members of the government. And international developments, including updates on Sweden and Denmark's announcements to train Ukrainian soldiers. Before we start though, a fake news warning. This is a disinformation warning regarding this video that has been shared on social media over the past days. Russian propagandists started spreading a fake video, which was distributed as proof that Ukrainian soldiers are persecuting civilians in Ukraine for using the Russian language. However, OSINT analysts managed to prove that the video was filmed in Russian-occupied territory. Shortly after, the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine also released a statement explaining why the video is fake. And now for the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Heavy fighting continues in and around the administrative center of Bakhmut. It is reported from both sides that Wagner has started several assaults inside Bakhmut. Heavy artillery exchanges are taking place. Yevgeny Prigozhin stated today that the battle for Bakhmut has already practically destroyed the Ukrainian army, and Wagner has been pretty battered. President Volodymyr Zelensky warned in his interview today that unless the armed forces of Ukraine win the battle for Bakhmut, Russia could begin building international support for a deal that could require Ukraine to make unacceptable compromises. Avdiivka. Russian sources claimed the capture of Kamianka today. However, no evidence has been provided and the claim has been made for a few days now. After reportedly taking massive losses around Spartak, Russian units are no longer advancing around the area. And to start the news segment, a quick look at the situation at the Kyiv Pechersk Lavra. The abbot of the Kyiv Pechersk Lavra, Monastery of the Caves, Metropolitan Pavlo, said today that he and other members of the Russian-controlled Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, UKOboronProm, have the right to stay and do not plan to leave the Lavra until the end of the ongoing legal proceedings concerning the monastery. The Ukrainian government has terminated the lease with the UKOboronProm and plans to start eviction proceedings on March 30th. The primate of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, Metropolitan Epiphany, appointed Archimandrit Avrami to perform the duties of the vicar of the Holy Door Mission Kyiv Pechersk Lavra as part of the OCU. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. Oleksiy Danilov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, hinted at the possibility of Ukrainian drones reaching Moscow and beyond. According to him, they have a flight range of more than 3,000 kilometers. One of the European countries supplied Ukraine with an air defense system which did not work. It was being replaced again and again, President Zelensky said in an interview. He did not name the country in question and stressed that Ukraine currently has no Patriot air defense systems and Ukraine would need about 20 batteries at least. The National Resistance Center has compiled a map of the camps where the Russians sent deported Ukrainian children to. The Kyiv Independent published an article about UkrOboronProm, Ukraine's problematic state-owned defense production giant. The article details how the company is being transformed into a stock company owned by the government. On April 14th, the anniversary of the sinking of the Russian Cruiser Moskva, the National Military History Museum of Ukraine will unveil a new exhibition of artifacts from the sunken flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Colonel Yuri Inat, spokesman for the Ukrainian Air Force, told reporters today that Ukraine is in urgent need of fourth-generation aircraft. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. According to the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov, several explosions were heard in all parts of Melitopol, Zaporizhia Oblast this morning. The explosions reportedly took place near the locomotive depot substation, and power outages were recorded in the northern and western parts of the city, as well as in Semenivka, Tambovka, and other surrounding villages. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, has arrived at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant controlled by the Russian occupiers. The Security Service of Ukraine is reporting that Russian Special Services representatives are using teenagers to spread disinformation about locations being mined. The National Resistance Center reported that this week the Partisans helped Ukrainian forces to detect and adjust fire on the Russian-controlled points and storage points. The center states that the Russians cannot fully control the occupied territories despite cutting the access to mobile internet, raiding and deporting people. An explosion was reported in a settlement of Vardiske in the Simferopol district of Crimea. Videos were published by local residents showing smoke rising. A Russian military airbase is located in the settlement. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. According to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, training commenced on the Yars system. The Yars system is an intercontinental ballistic missile system with a range of up to 11,000 kilometers and is being used by Russia's strategic nuclear forces. The President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has admitted that the sanctions imposed on the Russian Federation because of its aggressive war could negatively affect the state of affairs in the country's economy. Putin also assured fellow citizens that life expectancy in Russia has increased since 2022. According to a report by Bloomberg, in 2022, the number of Russian military personnel increased by 500,000, and about 100,000 of them were recruited by private military companies. Over 220,000 Russian troops have been killed or injured since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace said, citing US intelligence. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said that currently Ukraine needs air defense, long-range weapons and armored vehicles the most, and the F-16s at this stage of the war will not help the Ukrainians. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Sweden has summoned Viktor Tatarintsev, the Russian ambassador in Stockholm, due to the Russian embassy's statement threatening Sweden over the country's planned accession to NATO. Sweden will train Ukrainian soldiers in forest warfare, while Denmark announced it will train Ukrainian soldiers in trench warfare. Spain intends to send the first 6 Leopard 2A4 main battle tanks to Ukraine after Easter. The UN Security Council will discuss the deployment of Russian nuclear weapons in Belarus on March 31, 2023. And now for the Intelligence Report segment, starting as usual with the UK Ministry of Defense. Fighting continues in the Donbas town of Bakhmut, though Russian assaults are still at a reduced level compared to recent weeks. One of the key achievements of recent Ukrainian operations has likely been to push Russian Wagner Group fighters back from the 0506 route. This minor country road has become a critical supply line for Ukrainian defenders. Wagner had previously been within a few hundred meters of the route. On March 26, 2023, Russian media claimed Wagner had taken full control of the Azom factory complex to the north of Bakhmut town center. However, the area likely remains contested as it has been for the past fortnight. With Wagner having now confirmed the release of at least 5,000 prisoner fighters, personnel shortages are likely hampering Russian offensive efforts in the sector. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. The institute states that soldiers of the Wagner PMC have likely captured the Azom industrial complex in northern Bakhmut and continue to make gains within the city. The analysts estimate that Wagner has captured another 5% of Bakhmut and occupies about 65% of the city now. The researchers assessed that Wagner is likely working to consolidate gains in northern and central Bakhmut to push towards the city center and expand its zone of control into western Bakhmut. Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner PMC, may be using his influence in Russia's leading propaganda media to present himself as a candidate in the 2024 Russian presidential election. Prigozhin gave an interview to propagandists on March 14th, which was subsequently made public in Russia. The researchers pointed out the unique interview format. The filming style is similar to the public speeches of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The institute suggests that this may be a hint of Prigozhin's plan to become the president of the Russian Federation. This assessment is based on the fact that the video shooting style is unusual for Prigozhin, as his public video statements do not usually use such a sterile format. 3 more minor topics were assessed that do not really need a summary. Russian and Ukrainian sources speculated that Lieutenant General Andrei Kuzmenko will replace Colonel General Rustam Muradov as Eastern Military District Commander. High-ranking Russian officials continue a campaign begun in December 2022 to set domestic conditions for a protracted war both in private and in public. The Russian budget continues to reflect the overall cost of Russia's war in Ukraine. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The probability of launching missile and airstrikes on the entire territory of Ukraine remains high, because the enemy continues to ignore the laws and customs of war and continues to use terror tactics against the civilian population. Today, as a result of an airstrike on the infrastructure of the city of Berislav, Kherson Oblast, civilians were injured, private houses and civilian infrastructure objects were damaged. The enemy is concentrating its main efforts on conducting offensive actions in the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka directions. The settlements of Bilohorivka, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka remain at the epicenter of hostilities. Units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine repelled 48 enemy attacks in the specified directions. In the Liman direction, during the day, the enemy carried out unsuccessful offensive actions in the Vimka area. In the direction of Bakhmut, the enemy continues its assault on the city of Bakhmut with partial success. However, our defenders courageously hold the city, repel numerous enemy attacks. During the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive action in the Orikhovo-Vasilivka region of the Donetsk Oblast. In the Avdiivka and Marinka directions, the enemy carried out offensive actions in the direction of the settlements of Novokalinovo, Stepove, Avdiivka, Siverne, Pervomaiske and Marinka without success. In the Zaporizhia and Kherson directions, the enemy continues to lead the defense. In the Armyansk and Jankoy districts of the temporarily occupied territory of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, the enemy continues the construction of fortifications and trenches. The civilian population is actively involved in the execution of works. And that wraps up the report. If you're interested in any of the articles I mentioned and want to read up on the details, you can find links to them in the description as usual. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. I hope you will join me again tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.